I couldn't give you a tell. I would say I like Shedeur though. I think if it's close, I think you always go young. But I think he's put enough out there on tapes to where I would say he should have got the nod. But I'm not in their camp. I didn't see what they saw.
That is the quote that changes the temperature of this entire quarterback debate. Jaylon Johnson is not watching from a studio desk. He actually faced Cleveland, looked at what Shedeur Sanders put on tape, and came away saying that if the competition is close, he would go young, and that Shedeur had shown enough to deserve the nod. But the bigger question is not whether one Pro Bowl defensive back likes Shedeur. The question is why Cleveland can still look at the same competition and reach a very different conclusion.
All right, so you heard him right there. I think Shedeur's put more than enough on film. Shedeur is a better quarterback to me. And if it's close, you go with the young prospect. Like, there's no upside in playing Deshaun Watson. Let's keep it real.
And that is where this gets uncomfortable for the Browns, because the argument is no longer just coming from fans who already wanted Shedeur to win the job. You now have an opposing defensive back publicly saying he saw enough. That does not mean Jaylon Johnson gets to decide Cleveland's depth chart, and even he immediately acknowledged that he is not inside the building. But it does mean the Browns are eventually going to have to show why their internal evaluation differs from what some people believe the tape is showing. Keep that distinction in mind, because later there is a much more important clue about Cleveland's thinking. It is not a quote from Jaylon Johnson, and it is not another fan reaction. It is what the Browns are reportedly choosing to do with Shedeur when actual game reps are available, and that decision creates a much harder question than simply asking who looked better in one preseason appearance.
It's cooking, though.
Guy is like Deshaun was. Deshaun was a Pro Bowl player, having such great success at his old location, and then he comes to a new location. And it wasn't the fact that he went to a new location. Jay, you know when they give you money, the expectation is exponentially through the roof.
For sure.
You got to have a fully guaranteed contract, $230 million. Everybody thought it was going to shift the paradigm that now everybody's about to get guaranteed contract.
Yeah, no doubt.
To this day, he's still the only one that has a fully guaranteed $230 million.
Now the conversation shifts from talent to investment, and that changes everything. Shannon Sharpe points directly at the history attached to Deshaun Watson, the enormous expectations that followed his fully guaranteed $230 million contract, and the fact that Cleveland did not bring him in to be an ordinary bridge quarterback. That kind of commitment affects the entire organization. Coaches, executives, ownership, fans, everybody understands what was spent and what was supposed to come back in return. But that is precisely why this situation is so difficult to judge from the outside. A quarterback competition is supposed to be about who gives the team the best chance to win right now. An organizational decision can be much broader than that. It can involve command of the offense, experience with protections, communication in the huddle, practice consistency, contract realities, and how much of the system each player can operate without the coaching staff shrinking the playbook. So when viewers say, just play the better quarterback, the Browns may believe they are already doing exactly that based on criteria the public does not fully see. The problem for Cleveland is that once an opponent says Shedeur looked good enough to start, every invisible criterion becomes more controversial. If you are going against what fans think they see on tape, your explanation has to be stronger than simply saying one veteran knows the offense better.
Contract, and for whatever reason, we've talked about it on the show, 19 starts in 5 years. He's played 19 games in 5 years. It's hard, and I tell people this. When you're a professional, you got to do that thing over and over. It's got to be monotonous. You can't take no time off like that and think you're going to pick up where you left off.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I feel like not only the injury, like the off-the-field things started to kind of seep in a little bit. Yeah.
This part matters because Sharpe is describing something bigger than one bad stretch of football. He talks about how difficult it is for a professional quarterback to repeatedly stop and start, lose game time, deal with injuries, and expect the same rhythm to return automatically. Jaylon Johnson then adds another layer by pointing to the mental burden surrounding Watson's career after Houston. You do not have to turn that into an excuse to understand the football consequence. Quarterback is already a position built on timing, processing speed, and confidence. When the repetitions become inconsistent, everything gets magnified. A hitch in the pocket looks slower. A missed throw feels larger. Every mistake gets compared with the version of Watson people remember from years earlier. That creates two competing timelines inside the same quarterback room. Watson represents the veteran Cleveland once made a massive commitment to. Shedeur represents the younger option whose supporters see developmental upside. Those timelines do not naturally coexist forever. Eventually, the Browns have to decide whether they are still trying to recover value from the past or whether they are preparing for what comes next.
Mentally, because when he left Houston, he was a dog. So I think just everything that happened there, I also don't feel like Houston wanted him to leave. So I think there was some things playing into that, and just to your point, just the mental aspect of it. So when you go in there, you playing a quarterback and your mind's not right, you got all these different distractions, and then you add on injuries on top of that. It gets tough. Your performance has no choice really but to go down. But I think, overall, I hope he succeeds.
Listen carefully to Johnson's wording there. He says he hopes Watson succeeds. He is not wishing anything negative on him, but he still believes it is only a matter of time. That is a much more interesting statement than simply declaring Shedeur the better quarterback, because only a matter of time turns this from a preseason argument into a season-long pressure point. That pressure will build with every Cleveland possession. If Watson plays well, the noise gets quieter. If the offense struggles, every camera shot of Shedeur on the sideline becomes part of the story. And that is where young backup quarterbacks can become unusually powerful figures without taking a single snap. Fans are not comparing the starter against another player's actual NFL production. They are comparing the starter against possibility. Possibility is undefeated until it plays. That works in Shedeur's favor politically, but it also creates risk. The longer people project what he might become, the easier it is to overlook what he still has to improve. Cleveland's job is not to satisfy the loudest side of the argument. It is to determine whether Shedeur can run the offense at NFL speed when the protection breaks, when the first read disappears, and when defenses stop giving preseason looks.
Talking about losing games, all right, if you're just not good enough, you're just not good enough. But you just can't have guys roll over and die. It's a tough needle to thread, man.
I agree. But, it's just these things tend to work its way out the way they're supposed to. Look, if Shedeur comes in week 3 or at halftime of week 2, and it's like, whoa, okay, he has absolutely taken a step forward in development.
Now we get the first important counterweight. The Cleveland radio discussion is not claiming Shedeur is finished. In fact, the host leaves the door wide open for the entire evaluation to change if Shedeur takes a clear developmental step and gets on the field early in the season. That is a much more reasonable standard than pretending one August performance settles a quarterback's future. Notice the timeline they are talking about. Week 2, week 3, possibly a point where Shedeur enters and looks materially different from where he is today. That is development in real time. Young quarterbacks can change quickly because small improvements in operation create huge improvements in how the entire offense looks. Get the play out faster, set the protection correctly, reach the top of the drop on time, eliminate one unnecessary hitch. Suddenly the same arm talent looks far more dangerous. And that may be the hidden battle here. Fans are evaluating throws. Coaches are evaluating whether the entire machine works when Shedeur is responsible for operating it. Those are not always the same thing.
Different player in year 2, then okay, we'll have totally different conversations. I'm looking at it from today, from the standpoint of, yeah, it's not great that I'm hearing this Deshaun Watson was better than Shedeur. That's not great. That doesn't mean it's over for Shedeur. It doesn't mean everything's doomed forever, but it's just not good today. I'm open to having this change, to having this reality change throughout the year.
Well, I think we're going to have to, because even the most anti-Shedeur person out there probably looks at it and goes, yeah, we're probably going to see some Shedeur Sanders here this year, probably sooner than later, which brings you to another.
This is probably the fairest snapshot of where the disagreement actually sits. The radio host says hearing that Watson was better than Shedeur is not encouraging for Shedeur right now, but he immediately rejects the idea that it means everything is doomed. Then the conversation moves to what almost everyone seems to expect anyway. There is a real chance Cleveland eventually sees Shedeur during the season. That is what makes this quarterback decision unstable. A true established starter removes the debate. Nobody spends every week asking when the backup gets his opportunity if the starter is clearly in control of the offense. The fact that people are already discussing when Shedeur might appear tells you that the depth chart may be official, but the conversation is far from settled. For Shedeur, that means patience becomes part of the test. He cannot control which quarterback Cleveland names first. He can control whether the gap keeps shrinking. If the Browns want more operational command, he has to improve operation. If they want quicker processing, the answer has to show up on practice tape. If they want cleaner decisions under pressure, he has to make those decisions before the public ever sees him again. Because the most dangerous mistake for a young quarterback is becoming obsessed with proving the organization wrong instead of becoming impossible for the organization to ignore.
And usually they're not very positive. However, let me ask you this. They're not playing Shedeur on Thursday. And I asked Mike Tannenbaum, he said, well, that's a valid question to ask, because I'm going, you're saying the reasons that he's not able to play or able to start is operations. Deshaun Watson knows the offense better, knows we're supposed to go better. Okay, what helps Shedeur more? Is it standing on the sidelines, or is it actually going into a huddle and playing and getting the information out and having more experience getting the information out to players? What's going to help Shedeur more? Probably playing, right?
I think it's bizarre.
And here is the decision I told you to remember. The host says Shedeur is not playing Thursday and immediately asks the obvious developmental question. If the explanation for why he is not starting includes operation of the offense, how does keeping him on the sideline improve that operation faster than giving him live reps? That is a legitimate football question. Game reps force a quarterback to communicate inside a real huddle, get the call out, process the defense with the clock moving, manage substitutions, and execute with bodies around him. Practice can simulate much of that, but preseason exists in part because teams need evaluations under game conditions. So if Cleveland believes Shedeur still needs work in those areas, choosing not to play him naturally looks contradictory to people outside the building. There could be perfectly rational explanations that are not provided in this transcript. Cleveland may have a specific practice plan. Coaches may believe they already have enough preseason tape. They may prioritize keeping a player healthy. But without an official explanation here, those remain possibilities, not facts. And that vacuum is exactly where speculation starts growing.
He's not playing on Thursday night.
Okay, that's what Tannenbaum is, and Tannenbaum agreed with me earlier today at 7:20. You think it's bizarre too, which now conspiracies are flying. Because my first thought was, all right, a lot of people think that this is Jimmy's call. Could this, and you and I disagree with that. Could this, Anthony, prove that this is Jimmy's call, not Jimmy's call, where, and this is the total conspiracy, where it's like, hey, you want to start Deshaun Watson, you're going to have a lot of fans upset with us, fine. But you better not get...
The radio hosts openly call what follows a conspiracy theory, and that attribution matters. They speculate about whether ownership could be influencing the quarterback decision or whether Cleveland might be protecting Shedeur because fans want to see him. There is no verification in this source that Jimmy Haslam made that call, and the host himself says he is fishing for an explanation. So do not confuse the speculation with evidence. What it does reveal is how quickly trust disappears when a team's football logic is not obvious to the audience. If the Browns say Shedeur needs development, fans naturally expect developmental reps. If those reps disappear, people start filling in the blanks with ownership theories, trade theories, contract theories, anything that can make the decision make sense. That is a communication problem, even if the football decision itself is defensible. Cleveland does not owe the public every detail of its internal evaluation, but secrecy has a cost. When supporters cannot trace the logic from problem to solution, they assume another motive exists. That is why this story has become much larger than a backup quarterback debate. It has turned into a test of whether fans believe the Browns are operating from a coherent football plan.
The other thing that John brought up, ended up being a fish that I didn't really want to catch, was he goes, well, you saw some things that were good from him against Buffalo last week. Would this preserve any trade scenario for him? And I asked Mike Tannenbaum that, and he said that there possibly would be a trade market for Shedeur Sanders. Now, he said because the Browns are so not good that it would behoove them to just hold on to him and to see what he has, considering it's a quarterback league and they need one. And
then the conversation takes another turn. Trade value. Again, be precise about what is actually said. The host says Mike Tannenbaum told them there could possibly be a trade market for Shedeur Sanders. That is not a report that Cleveland is shopping him. It is not confirmation that another team is called. It is a hypothetical discussion about whether a market could exist, and Tannenbaum's broader logic, as relayed here, actually points in the opposite direction. Cleveland needs a quarterback. If you are a team without a settled long-term answer at the most important position in football, moving a young quarterback before you know what he is would require a very convincing return. That is the part some trade conversations ignore. Draft position does not freeze a player's value forever. A young quarterback can outperform where he was selected. He can also fail to develop. The entire purpose of keeping him in your building is to gather information. If Cleveland traded Shedeur before giving itself enough information, the Browns would be making a second bet. Not only that he is not their answer, but that the asset coming back is more valuable than the possibility they are giving away. For a quarterback-needy team, that is a serious threshold.
If there's any sort of a market, I have to ask the question.
Yeah, I don't think there's much of a market at all as of today. You know, it was nice how he played in that game against Buffalo. I did see there was like a film guru guy who we've seen before, and I know he's been on our station.
Ted Wynn.
Yeah. And he said, you know, it's second glance, the Shedeur performance wasn't as good as he thought after looking at the film because he was slow on everything. I saw a guy that looked composed.
And now we reach the most useful counterargument in the entire source. One evaluator cited in the discussion, Ted Nguyen, reportedly went back through Shedeur's Buffalo tape and came away less impressed on second viewing because he believed Shedeur was slow on certain elements of the play. That is exactly why preseason quarterback evaluations become so polarized. Live television rewards visible outcomes. Did he complete the pass? Did he move the chains? Did he look calm? Film review asks a different set of questions. Was the ball supposed to be out earlier? Did he identify leverage quickly enough? Did he reach the right read on schedule? Both evaluations can describe the same play. A quarterback can complete a pass and still be late. He can also hold the ball because the concept develops slowly, because coverage changed after the snap, or because the television angle hides what the quarterback actually saw. That is why anyone pretending a few broadcast clips prove everything should be cautious. The Browns have access to practice film, meetings, assignments, protection checks, and coaching points that the public does not. But the Browns also do not get automatic credibility forever. Internal information explains why coaches can know more. It does not guarantee they will always reach the correct conclusion. NFL history is filled with teams that misjudged quarterbacks in both directions.
And was even on the 1 3rd down, he went, or was it a 4th down? He went through all the progressions and, you know, landed the completion. I thought he looked really, really good. Even the interception was whatever, but I told you, and I see potential interception.
The other host saw something different. He saw composure, progression work, and a quarterback who, on at least one critical down, appeared to move through his reads and finish the play. That contrast is the real Shedeur Sanders debate in miniature. One viewer sees timing issues, another sees patience. One sees a quarterback holding the football, another sees a quarterback refusing to panic, and Cleveland has to determine which interpretation survives when the difficulty rises. That is why Jaylon Johnson's original quote carries weight without being definitive. Johnson faced the Browns. He believes Shedeur put enough on tape to deserve the opportunity, and he favors the younger player if the competition is close. That is valuable testimony from an accomplished defensive back. It is still one player's evaluation from outside Cleveland's meeting rooms. The payoff here is not that Jaylon Johnson has exposed some secret Cleveland refuses to admit. The stronger conclusion is that his comments make the Browns' burden of proof heavier. If Watson clearly separates himself, this debate solves itself on the field. If he does not, Cleveland cannot indefinitely rely on experience, system knowledge, or internal grading while the younger quarterback remains an unanswered question. At some point, evaluation has to become exposure. You have to see the player operate when the result matters. And that is where the Browns' decision not to give Shedeur those particular Thursday reps becomes so fascinating. Maybe Cleveland already has enough information for its current plan. Maybe the coaching staff believes his development is better served elsewhere during that week. The transcript does not establish the reason, but every week he does not play increases the value of the first week he finally does. The moment Shedeur enters a real game, this argument changes completely. Fans will no longer be debating what might happen. Cleveland will have evidence against NFL starters, NFL pressure packages, and NFL game plans. The protections will matter more. The windows will close faster. The consequences of a late read will become much more severe. That is also why Shedeur supporters should want the standard to be demanding. If the entire case for him rests only on being younger than Watson or looking promising in preseason, the case is incomplete. The argument gets stronger when he shows he can command the offense cleanly, diagnose pressure, protect the football, and create explosive plays without sacrificing structure. And Cleveland should want exactly the same thing. Because this is not ultimately about protecting Watson from criticism or protecting Shedeur from failure. It is about finding a quarterback capable of giving the franchise stability. That word matters, stability. The Browns have spent years cycling through uncertainty at quarterback. Whenever a franchise lives in that cycle long enough, every new option gets loaded with expectations that have almost nothing to do with the player himself. Shedeur is not just being judged as Shedeur Sanders. To some fans, he becomes the potential escape from everything that came before him. That is dangerous for both sides. It can make supporters interpret every positive play as proof. It can make skeptics interpret every slow read as disqualification. Development is usually messier than either story. A young quarterback can show legitimate NFL traits and still not be ready to start. A veteran can know the offense better and still eventually lose the job. Both things can be true at the same time. That is why Jaylon Johnson's phrase, "if it's close," is probably the most important part of his entire argument. He is not saying age automatically wins. He is saying age becomes the tiebreaker when the football difference is small. And if you are Cleveland, that should force a very specific internal question. How large is the gap really? Not how large was it months ago, not how much money has already been committed. Not which decision creates less noise. How large is the gap today? If Watson is significantly ahead in command, recognition, and execution, then start him and make Shedeur earn the ground. If the gap is genuinely narrow, then Johnson's logic becomes difficult to dismiss because development has compounding value. Every meaningful rep given to a younger quarterback can teach you something about the future, but there is one final piece people should not overlook. Starting is not the only way a rookie or young quarterback develops. Sitting behind a veteran can have value. Film preparation has value. Learning how an NFL week is structured has value. Watching protections get installed and seeing how defenses disguise pressure has value. The problem begins when development becomes an indefinite word that nobody can measure. Eventually, there has to be a test. That is why the next significant Shedeur appearance matters far more than the argument happening right now. Instead of asking whether the Browns secretly prefer one player, watch what responsibilities they give Shedeur when he gets another opportunity. Does he get full field concepts? Does he change protections? Does the ball come out on schedule? Does he stay composed when the first answer disappears? Does the coaching staff trust him in obvious passing situations? Those details will tell you more than any conspiracy theory ever will. And if he handles those responsibilities well, Cleveland's decision becomes harder. That is the pressure Jaylon Johnson just added. He did not decide the Browns' quarterback competition. He publicly raised the standard Cleveland will be judged against if the offense struggles and Shedeur remains waiting. So now you have to choose. If Watson and Shedeur are genuinely close, should Cleveland follow Jaylon Johnson's logic and give the younger quarterback the job, or should the Browns keep prioritizing the veteran until Shedeur clearly beats him in every part of the offense? Drop your choice in the comments. And if you want more evidence-first NFL breakdowns without turning speculation into fact, like the video and subscribe.